Joe's. All right, welcome everyone. We're going to start off with a public hearing before we go into the regular selectmen's meeting. It's required by law with any new liquor license requests. So looks like we've got classic provisions first on the list, and basically is sharing information. So what are you doing differently, and what are you going to be serving, and that way if anyone views the meeting afterwards, they're not missing out.
But we're not doing a whole lot differently other than transferring our license from an off-premise to an on-premise for beer and wine only. We did add 16 additional seats on the inside. And of course, we've just reopened our outside patio and put all our furniture out. So same thing, breakfast, lunch. We will be doing some private dinners out of the space, rehearsal dinners and business luncheons and dinners and things like that. But still pretty much the same. You can still get your cinnamon buns and still get all your homemade bread and the same kind of food. So
Excellent. Any questions? Joanna? No? All right. Thank you very much. So during this public hearing component, you're sharing information. We're asking any questions. The vote comes later on under consent items, okay? And Terry, Porterhouse.
Yeah, we'll be taking over the space that 46 was in and running it the same way.
Okay, are you keeping the same name, or can you? Porterhouse, yeah, okay. And when are you scheduled to open?
We're trying to open it probably the 3rd week in June.
Okay.
Probably by July 4th.
All right, great. So no change in the liquor that was previously served. Any questions for Terry, operating the former 45th parallel? All right, if there are no questions, Joe, in Zoom land, we only see Tracy. Is that all that's present? I just want to. Okay. Okay, just make sure we're not missing anyone out there. All right, given there's no other questions, we'll close the public hearing. Move into a regular Board of Selectmen meeting for May 16th, 2022. And we will start with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Meeting to order. We have a full board, therefore a quorum. We already know that Tracy is the only Zoom attendee. We're going to have a brief moment of silence to show our appreciation for our men and women in uniform. Thank you. Number 2 on the agenda is the conflict of interest disclosure. So if at any point during the meeting, a select person identifies that they have a conflict and should not vote or comment on an item, just please let the board know. Joe, any adjustments to the agenda?
None, Madam Chair.
Okay. Next up, to review and approve the meeting minutes for May 2nd, 2022.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes, May 2nd, 2022, that the additions or corrections.
Ethan's motion.
Second.
And Shelley seconds. Are there any identified corrections? All right, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Any public present to speak on a non-agenda item? Boards and committees, you can see we've got minutes for your review for the sewer ordinance and planning board meetings. Moving into consent items, we have got first on the agenda is the liquor license for Classic Provisions.
Madam Chair, I move the Classic Provisions liquor license for this coming year.
Steve's motion.
Second that motion.
And Ethan seconds. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. So we will be signing these after the meeting, and someone will be in touch as to if there's any next steps. Next up, the new liquor license request for Porterhouse.
Madam Chair, I move the liquor license for the Porterhouse on Route 17, formerly 45th parallel, with one request. That in the future, the map is legible for me.
It's very
And it's a
faint.
little bit more detailed because it does need to include where bathrooms are, things of that nature. But I move we approve it.
Okay, Steve's motion
Second.
and Shelley seconds. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
Good luck. Okay.
Yes. We've got the school budget referendum as the next item on the list. And this will be an item that needs to be signed after the meeting, and we need a motion to accept this, Joe,
Motion to countersign, Madam Chair.
to countersign.
Question also.
Yeah,
Are you guys all comfortable with page one where question number one, question number two? Is that all? Did it seem to make sense to you at first reading, or our vote is going to be as confused initially as I was? Thank you. I feel better already.
It's,
go ahead, Ethna.
it's unfortunately the way that the school budget has been written, or the warrant article's been written since they went to this style referendum.
But I get that, but you notice that. Are they gonna have the definition on the ballot so that they understand, as we have? Informational note on question 2, is that gonna be present on the ballot?
It'll probably be posted here, just outside of the ballot room. I don't know that it'll make it into the ballot boxes, or into the,
I have not seen the ballot, Madam Chair. I
Okay.
don't know for sure on that. I can get you an answer to that question.
I merely bring this up because here I sit reading this stuff, and I've just finished going through the damn school budget. And if it's confusing to moi, who spends a lot of time trying to understand, I find this distressing that we're gonna be asking a number of people to come in here and make a vote based upon what might be hanging on the wall. That's my point. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to take so much of your time.
No, it's a good valid point.
the unfortunate nature is that is one of the least attended meetings ever, is that school budget
Yeah.
meeting, the one that leads up to this referendum question.
Mhm.
I zoomed in on, it was 2 of us.
Yeah. Oh, so we needed a motion.
Need a motion to
countersign
countersign,
it.
yes.
I make a motion to countersign the school warrant notice of election for the RSU 78 budget validation referendum.
It's Ethna's motion
Second.
and Steve seconds. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We have the appointment of election clerks. So
Can we move the ballot as submitted, the group is submitted?
we can, unless we're required to, identify.
I'll identify them in my motion. I move that we, the election clerks for the representing the Democratic Party, Stephanie Chu, O'Neill, Haley White, Bradshaw Cummings, representing the Republican Party, Scott Wilson, Lisa Sicard, Colin Madrid, Albert Clinch, representing Independent Party, Aaron Pathiakis, unenrolled, Alyssa Andrews.
Steve's motion and Ethan seconds. Yes, Ethna.
Oh,
Yes. No, Ethna, go ahead.
I thought Alyssa moved. I just wanted to say that out loud.
That's what I was gonna say.
Say what?
I believe Alyssa Andrews has moved out of the town. She no longer lives here. So I just wanted to point that out. I
Yeah,
don't know that that would take her off the, just wanted to make sure it was on record. She's moved.
All right, so do we need to amend the motion saying verifying residency, Rangeley residency, or is this just, is she automatically exempt if she's not a Rangeley resident?
I think the answer to your question, Madam Chair, is if somebody has moved out and they're not a resident, or not a voting resident, then they would not qualify.
Okay,
I do not know. I'm gonna trust that the folks here are qualified, and the clerk will follow
She
up.
worked for the Heritage Trust. She was like the land trail steward.
I'll amend my motion to extract Alyssa Andrews from my motion.
Okay.
Second.
Are you, okay, Joe hasn't,
Joe's
Joe's feeling hinky about that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I don't have knowledge whether or not this person lives in town. The clerk is presented with a list of folks. If this person is somehow unqualified at the time of voting, then I trust the clerk would take an action to not allow that person to be a participant
Okay,
pursuant to
As-
state law.
yeah, as is her duty.
Right. I would hate to exclude somebody if they do qualify, I guess is my concern.
Okay,
I would have the board exclude somebody if they,
in case she hasn't established residency elsewhere.
So we go through the motion and have the clerk check the credentials and deal with it after the fact.
I will second Steve's first motion, still go on record as knowing Alyssa has moved out of the district.
Okay, all right, so we are going with the initial motion and knowing that the clerk will follow up as is her job.
Do we have another meeting between now and elections?
Yes, Madam Chair. June 6th would be the board's next regular meeting.
Right.
And the election.
Oh, then it's 11, yeah, okay, right, all right, thank you, I'm good.
Okay. All right,
Elected the 14th, but
Correct.
all right, so Steve's motion, Ethna seconds the original motion. And any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, and that's unanimous. All right, we have got some requests for appointment for the Veterans Memorial Committee, which is a brand new committee. Bylaws were recently approved. So the first is from Colin Madrid for a 3-year term to the Veterans Memorial Committee.
Madam Chair, I move Colin Madrid to the Veterans Memorial Committee for a 3-year term.
Steve's motion
Second.
and Shelley seconds. Questions or comments? Yes, Ethan.
where I currently sit on the unorganized committee, should I not be voting on this? Even though I'm not officially on this committee yet.
Do you stand to gain any financial luxuries from this,
No.
or have any financial gain? I don't think there's any conflict.
All right. Thank you for checking in, Ethan. All right, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. The next request for appointment is from Monica Lidle for a 2-year term.
Madam Chair, I move Monica Lidle for a 2-year term for the same, for the Veterans Memorial Committee.
All right, Steve's motion
Second.
and Ethan seconds. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
Madam Chair, I move Albert Finch for the Veterans Memorial Committee for a term of 1 year.
Second.
Steve's motion and Ethna seconds. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And all those abstaining? Okay, 4 in favor, 1 abstain. All right, we have a request for appointment from Shelley Lowell for a 3-year term on the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee.
A motion to reappoint Ms. Lowell to that committee because she wants to.
That's his motion. And Ethan seconds. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And abstain. 4 in favor, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you. We have next up a crack ceiling bid. We received 2 of them, and Joe, I'll just have you summarize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We released an RFP a couple months ago now, I guess, 1.5 ago. We had some interest at the pre-bid meeting. There was one company that was interested, did send in, full disclosure, they did send in a bid packet, but it didn't say the correct thing on the outside, so it wasn't open at the right time. So if they're listening, we did get that, and hopefully they bid again, but procedurally they didn't recognize it as a proposal. So we have these 2, and they're both reputable companies. Coastal Road Repair is the apparent low bidder there. I've worked with both of these companies, and I'm comfortable recommending Coastal Road Repair for the crack seal for fiscal year 21-22, which we're in the very tail end of now. So just to be clear, this is for the fiscal year that's ending at the end of next month. My goal is to have this work completed and billed by June 30th. Hopefully we can pull that off. Just a quick list of the streets and roads that are on this. School Street, High Street, Park Road, Grandview, Lake Street, Mingo Loop, portions thereof, and Cottage Ave. We should be able to cover a lot of that stuff with this, and maybe get other ones done too, hopefully. So again, my recommendation is Coastal Road Repair, $19 a gallon. Not to exceed $10,000, which is the budget.
Any questions or comments for Joe? I'll just make a comment that Pleasant Street, which was newly done, seems to have a lot of cracks in it as well. Just you know, if they're, just to make note. Ethna, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was just gonna, thank you so much for the cover sheet, but I noticed that we didn't get the attached documents, and I tend to like to look over bids to make sure we're comparing apples to apples when we look at pricing. But I noticed we didn't get copies of them.
Okay.
So just for future, if you don't mind, please.
All right, so Joe recommends that we accept the bid for Coastal Road Repair. We need a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the bid from Coastal Road Repair, $19 a gallon, with 300 gallon minimum, not to exceed $10,000.
Ethan's motion
Second.
and Ethna seconds. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We have a request from our town manager for a grant. And it's the Aquatic Village Transportation Study Grant with a town match of up to $40,000. So Joe, if you could just speak to that.
Certainly, thank you. This is the Planning Partnership Initiative Grant for the Maine DOT that I've talked about with you folks a couple of times now. I think we're at a point where we should apply for it. And what we're applying for, just to be clear, is a design of improvements to the Aquatic Village area. And I plugged in, I believe, a color photograph. It's got two areas in red, which is very difficult for me to see. Hopefully you can see it. The Aquatic Village area and the Haynes Landing project area. We want to look at pedestrian safety, traffic safety, general parking improvements, delineating traffic flows, and so forth, and making those connections in those two general areas. We thought it was a kind of a bridge too far to try to connect both of those right now, so we've isolated, Rangeley, Aquatic Village, and then Haynes Landing. And we're thinking about, are there ways, the study will look at, are there ways to connect Haynes Landing itself to the Haynes Landing parking area. And then the same thing with 4 and 16, Fish Screen, and then, Aquatic proper, if you will. So this is a planning exercise. 40% would be the town share of this, and the remainder would be 50% match from Maine DOT because of our state valuation. And we kick in 50% if we're successful. One thing that I do want to add, I had put this on the agenda for the economic opportunity folks this morning. They did not have a quorum. I do know that they're interested in having some input into expenses that come out of the reserve account for economic development and downtown revitalization, amalgamated reserve. They're familiar with this project. They have not heard any opposition to it, but full disclosure, they weren't a quorum this morning to give it the green light. I'm comfortable proposing to you that we apply for it, but I do want to let you know that they certainly would like to have some input And I haven't heard any opposition to it. And one last thing, Madam Chair, this is right now, we're working on kind of a universe of projects in Rangeley. This is the aquatic section, which I want to apply for this year. Next year, I envision kind of a bookend, if you will, for downtown Rangeley. I think I made note of that with the earmark request. I envision there being kind of a second application to the PPI program a year from now that would cover downtown Rangeley, so that we don't overwhelm ourselves and or the other folks on the other end of this. So, but for right now, I'm looking for authorization to apply to this PPI grant. The application is not, it's pretty easy to apply for, and you can actually see in that letter, that's what the application looks like. That's what I'm gonna mail in if you authorize it.
So with the funds not needing to be raised, they would come out of the economic downtown revitalization economic development reserve.
Correct, and the balance, Madam Chair, is currently around $127,000. Keep in mind, just a footnote here, this will probably come up later in the meeting. Footnote, if you remember, I am looking at voting facilities fund grants, which we've been given the green light to apply for. I don't have a number for those yet, that's why it's not on the agenda. And also, the way we left the budget this year, economic development consultant services would come out of that same reserve. So 127 minus 40. And then I'm sure there'll be a discussion when we get to that item in the agenda about what your preference is on economic development consultancy and how you want to approach that. But just to kind of keep that in mind, 127 minus 40 minus the voting facility fund minus potentially $50,000 for economic development consultant could come out of that.
Any questions? Yes, Ethan.
With that said, this is an application for a grant. This isn't a green light for a project. So,
That's absolutely right.
there's nothing I see wrong with applying for a grant, and we can make the decision about what we're going to do with it if and when it comes up.
That is correct, Madam Chair. And this comes to you via a new amendment to your grant policy that's a couple of years old. That says if there's a significant match, the town manager will review prior to applying. Was a very good point. So we have this discussion first, and then before you accept it, you'll be able to talk again about whether you truly want to do that.
Any other questions?
Comment, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead, please.
In the map that you provided for us, red lines, I understand, are certainly not to scale and accurate in terms of the scope. I do have a concern, though, that having a pretty good knowledge of these areas, is there going to be any land taken from residents in the area to complete the proposed project? And if so, could you have somebody identify to us in the future how much that is and where it is?
At this point, Madam Chair, I don't know of any land that would be taken for this project. My goal will be to work within the limits of right of ways that already exist.
Okay.
However, I say however, also, I did point out that this red line and Aquasic proper, if you will, includes the area that is the Aquasic Park intentionally, and included that because that needs some attention.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
But no, I'm very sensitive about where the public domain ends and private property begins. I wouldn't want to take anything from private property owners. At this point, I don't know of any case.
Tiny little follow-up.
Yeah.
When we did the Cary Road project, the Haynes Landing project, I fought and lost. As you look at that map, the high section, top of the page, is land owned. We wanted to get the crosswalk and a bike path down through there. It got ixnayed. So if you're going back that way again, recognize we've gone this route, built a beautiful road with guardrails, with no ability now to get wide enough for the footpath and or the bike path. But let's hope we can get it done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Any other comments or questions? All right, so at this point, we're just asking, or Joe is just asking for a motion to authorize the town manager to apply for the Maine DOT Planning Partner Initiative.
So moved.
Steve's motion
Second?
and Ethan seconds. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Next is the main infrastructure adaptation fund. Joe is also asking for authorization to apply for this grant. And Joe, again, I'll have you share.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is another Maine DOT grant. Sent to us by Maine DOT, I believe it's administered by Maine DOT. Verify that for this one's run. Yeah, well, I looked for that, and it's contact information, maybe. They allow us to apply for up to $4 million worth of construction, a smaller number for scoping, which is $10,000, $75,000 for design. Good news is we've got a lot of scoping done. There may need to be some fine tuning. When we did our climate adaptation plan, we authorized that. We looked at it in the last meeting. We've got that document that's 20 pages long or so that has a table in it that outlines the projects that would be beneficial to us in our efforts to be responsive to climate change. Some of them are snow gun improvements, snowmobile upgrades, the SCADA system, which has been on the windscreen in range for some period of time. What I did is I kind of worked backwards. I said, what's a palatable number here? Again, we could apply for over $4 million if we include construction. We don't have any projects in the pipeline right now for $4 million, but I said, a reasonable number, I think, to dedicate to this would be $10,000, and that would get us $200,000 on the other end of projects, which could include any number of those things I already mentioned. And there are a whole list of the CAP. Climate adaptation plan. So generally, just looking for authorization to apply for this, and maybe we can knock out some of the most pressing items at a 5% cost. So it's a 5% match. And I plugged in the $200,000 number because I feel that 10,000 is sustainable for us. Our balance currently in sewer reserves is around 300,000. We have recently encumbered 60 of that for the most recent grant that you've accepted. But if the budget passes, you'll have some more money going back in. So it's a positive thing. Again, looking for authorization to apply at this point.
All right, any questions for Joe with the information he's provided? All right, so we're need a motion to authorize the town manager to apply for the Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. All right, so it's Ethan's motion.
Second.
And Steve seconds. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We don't have any correspondence, anything that relates to the Canada Goose feedback we were looking for is in the next section under old business. Moving into old business, we've got the Economic Development Consultant Progress Report that was requested by the board at the last meeting. As well as our economic development consultant's current contract. which is good through June 30. Any questions or comments? Yes, Steve.
On page, the first page of the Economic Development Consultant Activity Summary Report, down the middle of the page, Rangeley Aquatic Pedestrian Infrastructure, Traffic Calming, Accessibility. What in good God's name is that?
It would be this. Yeah,
The planning partnership initiative.
yes, I'm sorry, yeah, the planning, we just voted on the, I mean, so it hasn't happened yet. It's been,
Okay,
go ahead.
I'm going back to school when I'm retired. I don't understand some of these. Traffic calming, is that the absence of road rage? I'm done. I just,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's not, yes, Shelley, it's not yet a project.
So this, Joe, actually was from you, right? That you found this grant, or was this introduced to you?
Actually, this, we really started looking at this heavily when the Commissioner Van Note came up in December, January. I mean, the programs existed for a while, but there was a kind of paradigm shift from the DOT to promote the PIs, the planning initiative, the village initiative, and so forth. We have done municipal partnership, the MPI, like on Blue Lake Road, we've had a history of that. That's been a popular program for 5 or 6 years. But Commissioner's really interested in having some select towns work on these planning partnership initiatives. So that's kind of when it caught my attention, and I said, geez, that's really something we could pursue if there's some interest in it. Now, I mean, it may have been on the radar, years ago, I'm not sure, but that's really when it surfaced recently as something that would be viable for us.
Shelley?
So I guess with his contract coming up, do you feel that there's still a need for an economic developer? Whereas at the beginning, we needed one because we had no idea about any grants. And the role was to assist us with getting grants and introducing us to grants and where to look for grants. Because I'm not sure when we visit because it's June 30th. when the Contract runs out.
Trying to think how to answer that question. There's a need, and you've all heard me say this, there's a need for planning in Rangeley. And I lean towards, when I say planning, I lean towards land use planning, more with code of ordinances and how do we want to see the town develop in that regard. That is quite often tied together with economic development, but it's very difficult, especially in this climate and this economy, to find somebody who's very skilled in both. So that's kind of a strange way to answer the question, but I think there's a strong need for planning in Rangeley, that if you had somebody that was really good at land use and they had some skills with economic development, that would be a good fit. I enjoy economic development. I think with what we've got in the gun already, that could get you through for a while. There's more to economic development, however, than just the grants. There are the relationships that get built. There are folks that have been doing it a while that know who to call and what's out there and so forth. So there's some value in that. That being said, one of the cues that the Economic Opportunity Committee has given me was after they understood what had happened with the budget, they said, well, is there a way we can have an economic development consultant person who's project-based? So if we had a specific task or a specific project coming up, or a specific grant that we needed help with, could we solicit some help and say, how much would it cost you, how much would it cost us for you to facilitate this particular grant for us? Or how much would it cost us to have you facilitate this certain study for us? And that would give some comfort to the Economic Opportunity Committee, because then they could know that their reserves weren't going to be kind of eaten away or used up, I should say, for what they view as operational costs. So to answer your question, I think there is a need. I think with what we have established now, staff and I can carry it forward for a while in terms of the grants. And I think if anything extraordinary comes up, I'd be willing to try a project-based scenario where we identified something we needed third-party help with. Excuse me, put out, per policy said, how much would it cost us to do X? And ask who we know who works in that field, if they can help us with it. Try it for a year, try it for 6 months. You get 6 months into it, you get into next January, February, and something might work. This isn't working. Go back and boys, go back in there and say, look, we need the consultant, or we need a planner, or, So there's a little bit of risk, but I think the good news is you've got a lot, as you can see, you've got a lot in the gun, so to speak, and there's plenty for us to work on here. With the initiative grants and the sewer plant grants and all the stuff we're working on. In fact, I would want to be cognizant that we don't take on too much.
Right.
Back to us.
That's kind of the balance.
Right. Any follow-up questions before I go to Steve?
Well, the other question I was gonna ask, as well, is that, does UMF have a planner degree?
Don't think so, but I can double check. There are some programs, I think USM might have something.
Well, I'm just thinking that some of those, they do like work studies and things like that, so that might be something to look into.
You mean an internship? you mean?
Yeah,
That's worth looking at.
Steve?
We had talked earlier in the year about utilizing AvCog. And that being said, are you working that into your mindset with AvCog? Because the second part of this, I would assume others here are going to be asking about AvCog in relationship to Darrell Sterling.
So, yes, Madam Chair, my plan, and what's in the budget is to use AvCog or someone similar to AvCog. So since we put that in the budget, they have had a planner move on. I know that they're adding or advertising for a new one. Hopefully they're able to get one on board. I would like to have, for the land use side of things, at least for this year, have AvCog kind of help us with that. And see how that works. And that's another thing we can try out over the next year and see if that's something that maybe works for us, and we can have a consultant, land use planner, and maybe a consultant, economic development person here and there to fill in. With the consultant, again, I know what I said, but with the economic portion, I see that more as a fill-in project based, but with land use planning, I'd like to have something more consistent, because I know we have some number of items to work on in terms of ordinances and the comp plan. And again, I don't expect at this point that they would carry the whole load. That number that's in the budget for AvCog is not an expectation that they're going to carry our entire needs universe of land use planning needs for the next year. I think it's just a significant amount of assistance to us, is the way I look at it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I view AvCog more as a resource. And tapping into their resource as well as Greater Franklin County Development Group. I mean, we have resources out there that can, and what Shelley brought up, I mean, there's at least 2 pages of things right then and there that you can draw from, certainly to meet these needs. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Ethna.
Just really quick, is anything that we have in play in the works contingent upon having an economic development consultant? And I only ask that because sometimes some of these grants say you have to have in order to get this money. Is there anything that we have in play that is contingent upon that position?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can double check the list that Tracy and I have and look at the assurances to be sure. One thing that's come to mind, Madam Chair, while the board's been talking, is that we're kind of on a pause this year, as you decided to do with the TIF, which is a good idea, but that will come back to life and be a very busy thing, I envision, next spring. So we probably want to revisit this budget season to say, okay, how's it going? Is it something we're going to be able to manage when that TIF becomes more active? So I've been Thompson made me think of that because the TIF, one of the eligible TIF expenses is economic development. So that may be one area where, you know, you can pull some of those funds and use it to kind of handle itself, so to speak.
All set, Ethna? Okay, Ethan.
To Athens' comment, wouldn't that be where the project-based consultant comes into play, where you need the consultant in order to obtain funding? That's where you would explore that, and isn't our TIF attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, don't they also handle services like that, need be?
I believe that they could in terms of credit enhancement agreements and other documents like
Right,
that, sure.
If we needed someone, we already have someone on the payroll anyways. And then my last thing is, with all this said, and what I keep hearing out of Joe's mouth, all these answers, am I hearing a recommendation that we do not renew a full-time consultant on June 30th? Because that's kind of what I thought I heard at least 3 or 4 times.
I think, Madam Chair, if I can answer it this way, the advice that I clearly can carry to you from the Economic Opportunity Committee is that, you know, the economic development consultant be project-based beginning July 1. And again, the rationale behind that is that the funding for this, and when the budget passes, will come from reserves. That's what we've programmed into the budget. So I think that I'll carry their recommendation to you. I will say that I think it'll be different for us to manage it that way. But I think I'm willing to try it and see how it works out. I have, full disclosure, I have talked to our current consultant about this. He's aware of it. We haven't gotten too far down the road into, you know, whether it's going to happen or not, but, you know, it is something that I've kind of broken the ice on. So I don't know yet if that person would be willing to take this on in this capacity or not, but I didn't want to get too far on that road without knowing what to.
Yes, Ethna.
So I assume that this contract or this agreement will be on our next meeting agenda, since it's up June 30th, so we can make that decision.
Or do we just not renew it?
It's up to you. If the board is ready this evening to make a decision, you certainly could make a decision to try to do it on a project-based basis for the next year.
Well, I like your point, Joe, that you made earlier, is the fact that we've already got a lot going on. And for an economic developer to look for more, that concerns me. The comprehensive plan does call for an economic development consultant. And once we have a quorum in our our comprehensive plan review committee, and we can see where, you know, what's been met, what still needs to be done, we probably would do fine with a consultant on an as needed basis. I mean, I'm just gonna be blunt. I do have some concerns about what's been listed in here. Like Steve had mentioned, you know, there are grants that were obtained many years prior to him being hired, like the $400,000 MDOT grant for the overlook sidewalk. We've been waiting 5 years to do that project. The funds were already awarded and they just couldn't. So
The governor pulled it.
the projects were frozen. So anyway, I have concerns. Go ahead, Steve.
One interim, go ahead.
So I certainly, you know, would support an as needed basis per the recommendation of the Rangeley Economic Development Committee. Steve.
Thank you. To Edna's earlier point, and not to suggest, Joe, that your mind isn't on top of things, but I think if you look on the page that says starts with 62,000 DACF grant, boat ramp, and then underneath the 20 to 23 grants, I believe most of those grant applications will require the services of somebody like Daryl. Now, again, I'm going back in this old man's history. And I've seen that language in there before, so to Edna's point, I believe there are quite a few of them that require. Secondly, the Economic Development Committee contacted me, a couple of them, while I was away. And there was some rumblings, and are those smoothed out?
Yes.
You comfortable? Okay. Because I believe if we voice too much more on this Economic Development Committee, we're gonna lose the lion's share thrust of some of the committee members, and that would concern me. And I think, even though I agree with Cindy completely about the length of time it's taken to get grants and this and that, I do believe there's some value in what Daryl has done. Thank you. I should add a great deal of value, because we've seen some projects come to fruition thanks to those efforts.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Actually, if I might just interject one more thing, I do think that we should have Joe have this discussion as to product, oversight of projects with Daryl and or whoever, maybe it goes out to bid, I don't know. But I think that before we move on what's presented to us tonight, I would suggest one more meeting and some time to get a little bit more data, because although I would just request we get some more data and have that conversation, so he's very clear on what that person will do or won't do.
All right, so to your earlier point, you think that some of these grants that are already in the works need to be double checked that an economic planner or developer isn't required.
Yes, I think that's correct. I do. And, it's just going to be a question of taking a look, see, or even asking the question, of Daryl. And he says, no, okay, he knows. He reads these things every day. Thank you.
So there doesn't seem to be a need for any action tonight. Regarding the subject now.
Were you looking for action on this tonight? No, okay.
That was just a question about the contract and.
No discussion, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the public comment period for the resident Canada Goose damage management plan. We've got 3 responses. And they're brief, so I will read them. The first is from Christine and Bill Wegman. And they write, we are residents of Loon Lake half the year and of upstate New York the other half. We've had many Canadian geese upstate for years now and have come to appreciate their presence. There are many benefits to having Canadian geese as part of the local ecosystem. Not only do they increase biodiversity, but they also feed on the invasive species which are so dangerous to our lakes. Canadian geese are also extremely protective of their young, and this protectiveness serves to create a safe space not only for their young, but also for the young of other native waterfowl. Please consider not attempting to limit the number of Canadian geese in the area. There will only be more, and it might be better to encourage a more positive understanding of the role they play. Thank you for opening this discussion. With all the best wishes, Christine and Bill Wegman. From Millie Hoekstra, a local resident, yes, totally support the Board of Selectmen and their efforts to control this issue. This will be a great step forward for the health and well-being of Rangeley. Thank you all, Millie. From Elizabeth Eastlack, I want to thank the Rangeley Board of Selectmen for undertaking the sensitive matter of goose management. Anyone in the area owning or making use of the local waterfront is all too aware of the negative impacts an uncontrolled population of them has on the property and safe enjoyment of it. Goose droppings pose a health hazard to pets and people alike due to the presence of disease-causing bacteria, salmonella, and E. coli. And it is quite unpleasant to look at on structures such as docks and decks. Coupled with the agricultural damage, flight safety hazards, and aggressive behavior, management of the population is important to public safety. I'm in support of whichever of the measures is deemed most efficient and effective for controlling our region. Sincerely, Elizabeth E. Slack. So those are the 3 emails that were received. There were a number of, there were some posts on Facebook in response to the announcement of this public comment period. Anything from the board?
Yes,
Yes,
I was waiting.
go ahead.
After you guys can go ahead of me. Okay, after my number of years working with inland fisheries and wildlife and listening to the biologists who were here present to help us with this situation, I want to point out 3 very specific things. First, it is our responsibility to manage wildlife. We have an entire department within the federal government, U.S. Wildlife Services. We have an entire department at the state of Maine, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. And we have been asked, we have been charged, and we have a responsibility to take care of the well-being of the citizens of the town of Rangeley first. I served here 18 years ago when we came very close to shutting the town park down due to ducks and geese and the quality of water. And we could not we were faced with the notion that if we had another heavy rainstorm, the town water in the town cove was going to be unsafe for people to swim. It was disgusting on the shoreline, and this is our park. This is where we want our people to go and enjoy safely. So although I empathize greatly with the letters we have, I also want to point out that I was approached recently by an individual who I respect greatly, and they said to me that what we're proposing in terms of euthanizing and this and that and sterilizing is more inhumane than having a depredation hunt. So I would really encourage that we look strongly at eradication, and I know that's a very strong word, of sections where we're not asking them, because, I mean, there's issues that we need to be respectful to, and I'm very respectful to that opinion. But I still feel strongly that we have a responsibility and we need to find a way. So let's get the biologists back in here. Let's come up with a game plan. Let's fund it and let's do it.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else?
I think Steve said it all.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Certainly the public comment I received was very thankful that we're taking up this discussion and are looking to resolve the matter. So I didn't have anyone voice any concern or objection to whichever plan we have moving forward. Yes,
So
Joe.
Madam Chair, just to recap, the action item from the board was essentially to have me move forward with all of the items on that list. I have intentionally paused a little bit to hear this discussion, and I have, although I've paused, I have talked with the biologists and so forth. They know what my instructions were. They know there was a public comment period. They were active in helping me write that document that went out. So I am still communicating with them, and they're sensitive to, what we're working with up here. They're going to be sensitive and helpful. So just to clarify and recap that, those action items have been presented to me. I just want to be sure that those are still by marching orders on that. And it won't happen without you knowing about it.
Right.
You'll have updates from me prior to anything actually happening. So I'm going to go reach back out to those folks and let them know that here's the public comment and we're still moving forward until I hear or unless I hear anything different from the board.
That's Shelley.
So I've been suggesting we do something ever since we spent about $900,000 at the park. And I feel that we've done everything. We have gotten those little flag dogs that go back and forth. That didn't work. We got that grape treatment. That didn't work. But then we couldn't use it, but I said, give it to some local person to see if it works. Someone said they tried it, it didn't work. So I think we've exhausted everything where we've tried to, but I think we're at the point now where there's just too many and they just keep coming back. And no one's hunting them. So that's not cutting our population in them down at all.
I think we even had noise boxes. I mean, we really, yeah,
Yeah.
these,
Yeah.
we really have tried everything, and certainly with Joe's help, back when you were our public services director.
Right.
That was, I mean, this discussion's been ongoing for a long time.
And even
as
putting
Steve
the
has said.
hedges on the edges to,
Mhm.
and that didn't work, so.
Coyotes and even the, years ago, the cannon or whatever we had, and then everybody was upset because there was noise pollution and they were scaring people, so we had to stop doing that, even though Everett was pretty good at it. They would go away. So I agree with Shelley, I agree with Steve. We already voted on it, so here we are.
Thank you for bringing that up, Shelley, because I think anyone that views this in the future, it's a good reminder that we have exhausted every possible.
And it's been years that we've been exhausted.
Not to mention the amount of time our personnel in Parks and Rec spend with vacuum cleaner downtown when they could be doing something else.
The time, the $30,000 vacuum, which now is what, 50?
Mhm.
50,000 for a vacuum.
Yeah, stuff's not cheap.
No. All right, if there are no other comments, then we'll move on to new business. The 2022 DEP compliance inspection of the wastewater treatment facility. So thank you for including this. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to touch on?
It's pretty self-explanatory, Madam Chair. There are a couple of handful of operational things that were pointed out in the inspection, which is typical, and then some recommendations. One of the recommendations is to review the sewer ordinance that hasn't been done since 2011. But overall, I did want to point out, the reason I left that email in there is I want to point out that it's a good job overall, keep up the good work. They just identified a few things, and this is for the plant itself. So good remarks, some clear things that Keith is already working on for improvement. So it's there for your information. There's no action required from you. I do have a sidebar note on this that does not have anything to do with this report. It has to do with the ongoing land application permit that Keith is working on. You're aware of that. I signed that to be sent out on Friday, the set deadline for Friday. So they did not make, a copy of that application did not make it into packets, but I will share that with you as you, part of the requirements that you have that. So I'll make sure you get that as soon as I can. That's not related to this, other than it's at the sewer plant. That's the land application, land spreading application. Just for your information.
Okay. That seems like a pretty good report. Any questions for Joe from the board? Okay,
Comment?
yes.
Please fill the staff. Thank you. Good job. It's important to see these things like this. It's great. Good job.
Very true. Next up is a letter from Waste Management regarding inflation cost recovery requests. So Waste Management is going to, well, as you can see from the letter, and certainly Joe, if there's anything more specific, they're going up in price and
Actually, Madam Chair, they're looking for, it's been a little while since I read this, but I think they're looking for help recovering costs currently.
Yes.
They're looking for voluntary assistance from the town to cover an extra 3%. I did not crunch those numbers. I didn't know. I didn't know if it would make much difference what the number was, but I'm happy to do that for you if you'd like me to. But I am concerned about this being a slippery slope. I do understand where they're coming from, but we do have a contract with them,
right.
you know, that's in effect. So essentially what they're looking for is an additional 3%
Okay.
on top of what's currently happening. That 3% would be for, you know, cost of inflation and their extra costs of doing business. So it's a request for that.
Ethan?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this vaguely resembles a certain fuel bid we got last fall.
I guess I'd want to see a profit and loss statement. It's like, prove you need it. Shelley?
What about any grants? Is there grants out there for?
Yeah.
For that type of. At the state level,
Oh, you mean for waste management?
yeah, for them to go after something,
Oh,
not
for them.
us,
Oh,
for
thank
them,
God,
not for
'cause I
us.
was all ready to
I'm
say
just
to you.
saying, no, because I'm not saying like, so say that the reverse was, it was different and the costs were lower, they're gonna come back and say, hey, are you gonna lower your contract?
Oh, yeah, we just,
If you know what I mean, if it was reversed,
If it was
would we be
reversed.
approached with the same thing, saying, hey, you know what, give you a discount?
Would you like me to invite this person to the bid?
I think we're just, I'm not, yes.
Or we
Ethna.
I just want to go on record as saying I can certainly sympathize with where they found themselves, given the current cost of things. But we are in a contract with them for a set amount. And while I appreciate what it took to ask for the request, I would certainly not be in favor of giving them an additional 3%.
I agree. Well, also, we operate on a budget.
Right,
That's where I
That's
would.
right.
absolutely.
We don't have a till to dip into here, so, sorry. Next. Oh, okay.
Voted on figures, it's.
Yeah. Mark,
Have they ever mailed the town a rebate check when they cost less than they anticipated?
I'll give you
I'm
that.
not recalling any rebate checks that, were shared. Anyhow, so
No action.
no action is, I'm not hearing a motion, so we'll move on.
You could try for PPP funds.
I think they're for profit, right? They're, well, I don't know. Moving on, we've got the MMA Legislative Policy Committee nominations. Joe, care to, has this been in our packets before? I'm not, does anyone recall?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Just not. So we're looking for they're looking for nominations for their Legislative Policy Committee, and yes, Ethna.
I would like to ask the board to support nominating me for this, the Legislative Policy Committee. I've been on several in the past. And it's really, I find it an important aspect of government work, and it gets us in a good position of knowing what new legislation is coming at us. Being on past boards, I'm very familiar with writing testimony in support of or in opposition of any new legislation that may impact us. So I would
I
request
move
that.
after. Sure with
All right, so we've got Steve's motion and Ethan's seconds to appoint Ethna to the legislative, or sorry, to complete a nomination form naming Ethna as a member of the Legislative Policy Committee. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? And abstain. So we have 4 in favor and Ethna abstaining. Thank you
Thank you.
for,
Keeping us straight.
yes, really appreciate it. And last under new business is the cross street paving. So Joe, I'll just turn this right over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Water District is preparing to embark on a project on the short section of project, that touches Center Street. That work is gonna obviously involve, some trenching. It's gonna be put back, the road's paved currently, put back with patches, high quality patches to the paved surface once they're done. There are 3 options I see. Keith and I have talked amongst ourselves and with the Water District. First option is that we can leave it attached and that would be okay. Second option is once it's attached, we could overlay it, just put a surface on that road. It's 430 feet long, I think. And then the third option, which Keith and I prefer, we'd like to start with this and see if we can work with the water district too. And it's a little complex because they have a contract right now for the work. What we'd like to do is see if we can come up with a financially feasible solution to pave the base pavement and the surface pavement in cooperation with the water district. So they have some items now for pavement removal and pavement patch replacement. So it would involve us working with them and then working with their contractor. Our engineer is in common, it's right here, so that's nothing lost in translation there. But that's what I'm looking for. I guess I'm looking for authority to spend an amount not to exceed, I would say $25,000 to pave Cross Street, with the first option, preferred option being new base and new surface on that street. Town share not to exceed this amount that's in the book. If that doesn't, if we can't come to terms, because they've got plans to begin work in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think. Can't come to terms, and we can always overlay it when they're done, which would be less than this amount. That's where the not to exceed comes in. Or if if you're comfortable with it being patched, then that's the third option. But I think that would get us by for a while too.
And the funds would come out of the road loan.
Yep.
Questions, thoughts? Yes, Ethan.
I sat in on this meeting, by the way, the pre-construction meeting. What would you do with the drainage, with your preferred option?
Excellent question, Madam Chair. So one of the offshoots of the conversation we had was, can we enclose the drainage on the uphill side? There's an open ditch on the uphill side. We got some pricing from our engineer, unit pricing based on today's market. That came in to install under drain on the uphill side, a couple of basins. As I recall, it was just under $65,000. And for that amount of money, Keith and I said, we think it makes sense just to clean out the open ditch for now, and just leave it that way. Maybe reset a couple of the driveway culverts. There's one culvert that's kind of showing, that we could put that back there. So the answer to the question, Madam Chair, is at this point it would just be O&M, operations and maintenance, clean the ditch up, reset a couple of culverts. And for now, leave it at that. There are no known drainage issues. I think I heard in that meeting that, when it storms, there's really nothing overtops the road that causes any problems. So.
I just want to make sure if we decided to do this, that we weren't going to lay down, rebuild a layer of the road, lay down some nice pavement, and then have some crooked culverts and some ugly looking ditches. We've done at the very least have those addressed.
Mark, I just want to make sure, Mark, anything else from the board? Okay, Mark?
I was just wondering if no one else needs to dig that road up, the sewer department or the highway department, anyone else in the next 5 years, so.
Keith and I had that discussion, actually. There was a question that I brought up. There's a force main, as I recall, there's a force main that goes through there. And we didn't think that would need to be done for somewhere around 10 years anyway. So, but I did ask that question. The answer was no, we don't have any anticipated need to dig that up.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, Steve.
When the state does a road, as an example, down through Saddleback, Motor Inn, all the way down through there, they impose a moratorium. And they notify the municipality that we're doing this job, much like Mark is talking about what's going on for the future. And should something come up, there's a moratorium and hey, you can't do it, or you gotta do something different. Because when they invest money in the tar. So, Mark's point, your discussion, the drainage is, we've all ridden around town and every once in a while you see a pipe show up out of somebody's basement and then. So anyways, what's our policy? This whole soliloquy is about, do we have a policy if we're going to invest money and we're going to partner with the water district and this and that. Do we have a moratorium that says, even to ourselves, hey, let's do some good planning here, make sure that we're not laying down X amount of thousands of dollars of tar and then 2 years later, or a year later, dig it back up because we forgot.
Madam Chair, I would have to check our ordinance to see if there's a moratorium provision in there. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Maybe there doesn't need to be, but I do believe that proper planning, much like, and I'm not trying to be redundant here, but even though Cross Street's very small, it's an integral component to a number of different underground facets of our community infrastructure. So, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Ethan?
Not having policy information from me, I can't speak to the letter, but I don't believe the town has a moratorium policy, whereas water district on several occasions for new customers has gotten into fairly new pavement. One that comes to mind is the new service for the Furbish House restaurant, but I can't remember how many years after the fact that was.
It was 5.
Okay, so that would probably.
I'll tell you why I remember this thing, because where the Lanza property is there, they would not let them dig it up to
Yeah, the
connect to
state,
the sewer line.
the state will, but I
Yeah.
don't believe the town does.
Yeah, no, I don't.
All right, so Joe's looking for direction on how the board wishes to approach this section of Cross Street, whether it's patched up, leave it as is, overlay over the patch, or if it is going to be a base pavement with overlay. With the latter being the most expensive, not to exceed $25,000.
I move Joe's recommendation.
All right, we have Steve's motion for the base and surface pavement not to exceed $25,000. Correct?
In cooperation with the water district.
In cooperation with the water district. Steve's motion.
Second.
And Shelley seconds. Any other follow-up questions? All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
May I ask
Go ahead.
thank you, Joe, when you work with, I know that the sewer department's within our own town, but when you work with an outside entity like the water district, is there a monetary amount that we should be billing them for these types of projects? Or are they assuming some responsibility of the total project that we now are subject to? I want to do this after this discussion because it seems to me, if you were to break up a road, there's 3 parts of ownership. There's the municipality, there's the sewer, which is still a municipality, and then there's the water district, if they're able to work in conjunction with. So do they pay a portion of the tar just because?
My understanding is that in this case, let me answer it this way. Keith and I knew that this was coming up some number of months ago. And at that point, we just envisioned it being a series of trenches. It wasn't a whole complete box cut. So we said, all right, it's just some trenches. Then when the actual plan set came in, and they were further down the pipe, which was more recently, we realized, I think it's somewhere near 65% of the pavement's coming out. We're like, geez, I mean, if we can get in the game at 45% of this, and work with them. So to answer your question, there will be some cost sharing. We're gonna pay a percentage of whatever happens there, and they're gonna pay a percentage based on whatever their contract was initially. It's going to get into some arithmetic because their unit prices for some of these items are different than our unit prices because we have paving numbers that are frankly better because we're doing more volume. So we've got, that's where the in cooperation with the water district comes in, and I'm hopeful and optimistic that we could work something out with that in mind, that there's a water district portion to this work, and then there's a town portion to this. It'll be based on whatever that ratio is today, and however that moves forward, and whatever we do, that ratio will be how we frame up as what. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Town manager reports. We've got a department head update from the PD and from Chief Bacon. And moving on to the calendar, a week from today at 6 p.m., we've got a final warrant public hearing. So it'll just be our final review of the warrant. We'll go into some discussion about the couple of the unique questions. That would be the main PERS and the ARPA fund bonuses, just so, you know, hopefully folks will listen and understand that. The fire department will be present, or they'll have representatives to answer their any questions the public may ask about their own warrant article for the $750,000 engine 3 replacement. June 3rd is the last possible date to post the warrant. June 6th is our meeting with the Rangeley Region Economic Development Committee annual discussion, just about, you know, maybe some direction over the next year. That's at 5 p.m. Town meeting for vote on the warrant is on June 14th. Absentee ballots, Joe, when do they become available?
It should be available now.
That's what I thought.
13th.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be available.
Mark?
That's what this is. They were scheduled to be available starting the 13th.
Okay.
30 days prior to the election.
Under other business, congressionally directed spending request update. Joe's got a notation in here in his town manager notes, but I'll have you just speak to it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I alluded to this earlier. I came to you a while back. I was pretty excited about applying for earmarks through Senator King's office. There was a close deadline on that, which is why I came to you right away and said, can I put in a letter of intent? I did put that in, ended up having a nice conference with Ben and company from Senator King's office. And this was regarding the undergrounding of the waters. And they said, put it in, get something in, but they said, please call Senator Collins' office and get a feeling of what's going on over there, and then get back to us. So I went through those motions, and Senator Collins' application deadline was closer than Senator King's. And the next morning, so after I had those couple of calls, I told them both, I'll get back to you. I met with folks from DOT in this room, and I just want to be clear that nobody from DOT said, don't do this. But they did tell me, what I saw in a follow-up presentation at APCON, that chair, was what the DOT does with these applications for PPIs is they organize these and they sit down with the congressional leaders. They'll have a meeting with Senator Collins and Senator King and Jared Gold and others. They'll have those face-to-face or proxy meetings over Zoom and talk about earmarks or other types of funding. So my last minute intuition on this was to put the brakes on because I did not want to confuse anybody or maybe, I don't want to use the word step on any toes. I did say that to Ben. He said, don't worry about that. You're in the wrong business to worry about that. But anyway, I did want to, and we had the pleasure of meeting Ben in person.
Yes, oh my gosh, he should just stand up. He is so funny. It's from Senator King's office.
But I did want to talk. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I should.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
He's a blast.
Yeah. So I wanted to close the loop with you. I know that you had authorized me to send the letter. I did send the letter, had the conversations But my feeling is that because this project will be part of some other types of applications, I feel like it's better to let that play out. So wanted to close the loop, let you know that's where that's gone. If you object to that, let me know, although the deadline is already passed, so. This was going to project, just wanted to let you know, that's where that's at. The good news is the takeaway is they're now familiar with that, they know that we're looking to do that.
Right.
They'll remember that. So when they see it, however, whatever form they see it in, when it comes to their office, they'll say, oh yeah, we remember this.
So does it, so Joe, if I understood you correctly, so it's almost like worth getting DOT involved. I mean, because if they're sitting there with the
Yes.
congressional delegation and they know and they're familiar with what
Yes,
the plan is, they can advocate.
they will advocate.
They will
absolutely.
advocate.
Yes,
Yeah,
if they
that
pick
makes
our
sense.
project and carry it forward, they will do that for us. And I think in this case, it's probably better for us to let them do that.
Any questions for Joe? That's it for town manager report. Moving into select board communication. Ethna, do you have anything? Shelley?
I just wanted to follow up from my questions from last time. Have you heard anything back from legal on the petition? For the questions I have?
No.
Okay.
But I'll make a note to get on those. I have that list, Tracy's got it. Follow up on it.
All set? All right, Ethan? Steve?
All set.
I just have a couple things. Candidates night. We have 4 people running for 2 seats. Anything from the chamber as far as their willingness to host?
So, Madam Chair, I reached out to, it was Joanne, I reached out to the chamber. Let them know that there was some interest, there was some talk in the last meeting about there being a candidates night. She had mentioned that the last time they did it, the driving force behind it was a local attorney that you all know. I think Tracy, I know Tracy reached out to him. I'm not sure that he has the time to do it this year. So I haven't heard anything back from the chamber about whether or not they're going to be putting one on. They did say that from the last time they tried to arrange one, I think there was only one candidate that was willing to participate. I don't know how long ago that was. So as of now, there's no, to my knowledge, no candidates night scheduled.
That's a shame. I've had a number of people ask me. I mean, first time I ran, the chamber did the head candidates night at the theater. Second time, Chris did it at the school. And then the most recent time, COVID, was full blown and there wasn't anything. Frankly, it should just be, I don't think there should be a choice. I'm just gonna be really blunt about this. You're running for selectman, not to be the local dog catcher. And so you have to attend meetings, you have to work with the public, you have to answer questions. And if someone isn't willing to do a candidates night, then that's a reflection on their willingness to speak and address the public. And so I feel very strongly, and I will reach out to Joan myself, and because I've had a number of people ask. And it's not easy sitting here and being a selectman. And certainly candidates night is no picnic either. And then I had a message left on my machine at home just before coming, or just prior to me getting home tonight. And it was someone leaving some information. Then they made a reference that COVID is tearing through Rangeley. does anyone know about COVID tearing through Rangeley? Has there been a sudden uptick in cases that the health officers mentioned through school or? All right,
Not to my knowledge.
okay, it was, like I said, it was a resident who left a message on my machine and made that comment, so I didn't know if I was the only one in the dark.
We don't have anything from our health officer.
No,
Anything
well,
like that.
just, yeah,
He's
and,
certainly on top of it.
oh, I would think, with the school and whatnot, okay, I just want to make sure that I didn't miss a memo.
I think mono currently is having a greater impact on Rangeley than.
Oh, no
COVID.
kidding, I haven't heard that,
The last 2 months, I've heard a few things about it,
okay,
hearing things about it, is not
no,
knowing things about it.
that's right, that's right.
What do you mean? Coffee shop talk isn't gospel?
Depends on
Sorry.
depends on the shop.
All right, I have nothing else under select board communication. We do not have an executive session tonight, so, well, I'm sorry, Mark.
I just have a question. I was wondering if, I noticed the leaves are coming out on the trees and that ortho imagery we contracted for, they were in hopes of gaining that imagery before the leaves came out. Do you know if they were able to buy this area and?
I haven't heard anything recently, Madam Chair. I do know a few weeks ago they did get in touch with me and others, the county, to check on the conditions. So I know that they were watching it very closely.
Yeah, it's a pretty narrow window of opportunity between when the snow leaves the ground and the leaves start coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah,
So I'll,
I was
look
just
for
curious.
it. I do not have an update, but I'll make a note.
all right, thank you. All right, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Steve's motion
Second.
and Ethna seconds.
I'm always amazed at the time lapse.
I know. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Have a good night, everybody.
Board courtesy.
Thank you so much for attending tonight.
Yes.
Yes.